in the last class was this little bit I've gotten here. And do you have this on the finished file? If you pull up the finished file from last time, do you see this section? Somebody in the last class was telling me maybe that's not there. So even if you pull up the finished file from last class, it's not there either. No? Yes, maybe?
It's there.
It's there?
It's there.
It's there on the finished file from last class?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got it. I'll make sure it's on this next one too. I'm not gonna go back through the individual commands that make this up, but I want you to see something. I want you to describe to you what's happening in these different commands. All right, so I've got those numbers up there, 1.025, okay, that's somewhere in here. 1.958, somewhere up close to this. Negative well, it is actually 1.958, but it doesn't really matter. It's down here. Okay. I want you to be aware of the different kinds of things you can do to convert numbers. So you could take the integer of those numbers, and what the integer of those numbers does is it takes and moves that down to the next nearest integer. So the 1.0 something moves this direction. The 1.9 moves down to a 1. You can see the result of it right there. And the negative 1.9 moves down to this -2. So you see the result of that integer right there. And the integer is just taking the integer of that number. Okay. In the one where it truncates, it couldn't care less, about what number is past the decimal place. It just chops it off, gives you a 1. Chops it off, gives you a 1. Chops it off, gives you a -1. That's it. Is no concern over what that is. It's just chopping off the decimal and leaving you with the integer portion of that number. Okay. The other one was going down to the next nearest integer, and that's why it became 1, 1, or -2. While you may not use those a lot, I have them up there because I want to contrast them with these round functions. When we have round, and we used round already. We actually rounded that stuff that came off the torsion strength measures and all that stuff. So we've rounded before, and round just rounds appropriately to the closest. And in this case, one thing you notice about round, well, these are just mathematical functions doing something to a number. This is changing the number, and you do have to specify decimal places even if you want it to be 0, okay? So I'm saying 0 decimal places, and it rounds appropriately, okay? A 1.025 rounds to a 1, okay, when you're saying 0 decimal places. A 1.9 something rounds to a 2. Anything 0.5 or above rounds up. Things below 0.5 round down, okay? A negative 1.96 rounds to a -2, okay, to the closest. It rounds to the closest one. In this case, an integer because we said 0 decimal places. But there are times when you might want to force it to either round up or round down. If you were putting on a little conference that you wanted to see how many people needed to register and pay in order for you to break even on your costs, you have both fixed and variable costs. You'd have fixed costs of paying the speaker, renting the room, and then you'd have variable costs for things that are associated with each person, like serving them breakfast, serving them lunch. When you have fixed and variable costs, you can perform break-even analysis, right? You've done this at some point sometime, right? Okay, well, you do break-even analysis, and you would come up with how many people do you need to have attend in order for you to break even, in order for you not to lose money, okay? And if it said that you needed 62.3 people, okay, do the math, 62.3 people to register and pay, how many people do you need to not lose money? If it said 62.3 people break even, how many people do you need to not lose money?
63.
63. If you were just rounding the number, it'd go to 62. You're going to lose money at 62. I'm not saying you're losing a lot of money, but you're going to lose money. You have to have 63. That's a perfect instance of when you would need to round up the number, and then that number maybe is then carried forward on the rest of your worksheet in all kinds of calculations, but it's an appropriate time for you to round up, okay? Rounding down. If you were figuring out your raw materials, and if you have enough raw materials to make your product, you make a widget. It requires 3 different raw materials, and you have X amount of these 3 different raw materials, and you do the math to figure out how many widgets you can take from, make from the raw materials that you have available, and it tells you that you can make 86.8 widgets. How many widgets can you make? 86. You don't quite have enough to make that 87th one. Okay, you don't have the raw material, you don't have the raw material. That would be an appropriate time to make the number round down and then carry that number forward in your other calculations. Because you cannot make that 87th one, you can only make 86. But I want to show you on here what's different about, as far as the function goes, you just say round up or round down, you just round up or round down that number. So it isn't about the function that's in the cell, you can look at that later. It's about what's happening over here. Okay, the 1.025, we force it to round up, you notice it goes to 2, okay? We force it to round down, it goes to 1. Okay, that makes sense. The 1.958, we force it to round up, it goes to 2. We force it to round down, it goes to 1. That's all making sense. We take the negative 1.96, and when we round it up, it goes to -2. And when we round it down, it goes to -1. Now, if I hadn't drawn a number line for you, and we just talked about the fact that round up of a negative, just look at the number. Round that up, oh, -2, round that down, -1. That might make sense, it's intuitive, it's practical, it makes sense that that's what we would do, okay? But if you were looking at a number line, that's not really down and up, is it, okay? This rounding up to -2, that's down on a number line, rounding down. So what you have to understand about the round functions, which are actually the ones you will probably use a lot more often than you would use in the integer or truncate, okay? You will probably use round up, round down. And that's because intuitively they do kind of make sense what you have here. But technically speaking, here's what happens. Rounding down on the round down function is going towards 0. Rounding up on a round up function is going away from 0. So as opposed to just being on a number line, that's up, that's down, okay, it doesn't work like that. Down is towards 0, up is away from 0. And that's actually a very intuitive way to do it. It's actually kind of practical to do it that way. If all your numbers were positive numbers, then none of this would matter, okay? You wouldn't even be thinking about it. This becomes an issue when you have negative numbers. Okay, that's when it becomes an issue where the up and the down, you have to think about what it is. So I'm not really saying, I just want you to be aware of that sort of thing, and that you will use those a lot. That's how they work. If it's not how you wanted it to work, you have other options. Okay, you have other options available to you. And then just real quick, the absolute value of a number, most people just think of it as the positive of that number. It's the distance from 0, but anyway, which ends up making it a positive value. But anyway, that's an easy one. We're good with those? That would have been one of the things that we would have done. And we also, last time, would have talked about transposing data. So it's already out there, but you look at this data right here, QRS 4 through whatever it is, 7. If you look at this data, everything in this column is just a 1, and everything in the next column is the previous column plus 1. That's why you're getting a 2. And then this one's the previous column plus 1. That's why you're getting a 3. Okay, so they actually have formulas in there. Transposing data is just saying, flipping it from being in rows to being in columns. Just flip it like this. And that would be fine if these were all constants. If they were just hard-coded in values, okay, just flip them. There, it's good. But you have to see what, that Excel actually handles formulas well in two. When I take this data right here, and I copy it, Control C or press copy or whatever, and I move to the upper left-hand corner of where I want to transpose it. A transpose is a special kind of paste. We did the pasting values last time. Well, this one, the transpose, is up here on the second row, looks like you're flipping rows and columns. It's exactly what it looks like. So you flip that, you transpose it, and then you need to see, well, what do you have now? Well, the ones that were ones are still ones, they're just in a row instead of a column. And then the twos, up here, it was the previous column plus one. Well, here it's the previous row plus one. Okay, so it worked just fine. Excel handled the formula just fine. It was able to transpose it. Now, if we had wanted to transpose it and turn it into values all at the same time, the problem is when we go to copy it and then paste special, there's transpose, there's values, and I can't click both at once. I could take 2 steps in doing it, that'd be fine. But also you can open up your paste special dialog box, which lets you set all the things you want to do. So you can save values and transposing and all those kinds of things if you wanted to. So just want to show you that. Okay, well, that's what we would have finished last time had we not run out of time. We would have done that last time. Everything good with that? Because really today is just a real switch in topics in what we're dealing with. And we need to, got an eraser, so we're good now. Okay. What I want to look at now are conditional and logical type functions. And I have a whole little example set up to handle this. But one of the conditional functions that, I already used it real briefly way back on the first day, we hadn't really talked about it a lot yet, is an if statement. When you have an if statement, what you have is a condition, and yes, I'm sort of abbreviating words, but anyway, you have a condition, what you're going to do if that condition is true, and what you're going to do if that condition is false. And that's what an if statement is. It's its simplest form, has 3 parts to it. It's condition, what you want to do if it's true, and what you want to do if it's false. So the thing about the condition is that the condition absolutely has to evaluate out to be something that's either true or false. I mean, it has to. Okay? I mean, if it doesn't, you don't have an if statement. You can't do anything with it. It has to evaluate out to be something that is either true or false. Okay? And we're going to talk about different ways that it could do that. And then, what you do if it's true, well, let me back up one step from this, because I don't want to forget to say this part. An if statement, where you have a condition, what to do if it's true, what to do if it's false, is like if in programming you had an if then else statement. It would say, if this condition is true, then you will do this, else you will do that. Okay? So it's an if then else statement in one Excel function. Okay? And in programming, that's also referred to as branching, because you either will do this or this, but you won't do both, because it's not both. It's not both true and false. It's one or the other, and you will either do this or you will do this. Okay? But you're not ever going to end up doing both of those things. Okay? So you branch to one or the other. That has to evaluate to be something that is true or false, so you know where to go next. What is right there in that true or right there in that false? Anything you could type into a cell. It could be a number, it could be a text string if it is, it needs quotation marks around it. Okay, it could be a number, it could be a text string, it could be a cell reference, it could be a formula, it could be a function, it could be another if statement, because that is a function. Okay, it could be another if statement in those places. So if you could type it into a cell, you can put it here. The only thing you have to know is that text would have to be in quotation marks. So we're going to work through an example where we start talking about how things evaluate out to be either true or false. So we'll move over here. I type this into a cell, equal, because this is about to be like a formula, and so I have to designate that in that way. 3 plus 5 equals 8. All right, so first thing you might be thinking is, why am I doing the work for the spreadsheet? why am I adding up 3 plus 5 and saying 8? Why didn't I just say 3 plus 5 and let Excel tell me 8, and you know it? Because that isn't what I'm doing. I wasn't actually trying to make a calculation of what is 3 plus 5. I wasn't trying to do that. When I have a comparison relational operator of any sort after that first one, because the first one is designating to you that this is a formula or a function, but once you get past that one, if there is an equal, not equal, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, anything else after that, I'm not asking Excel to make a calculation. I'm asking Excel to make an evaluation of the statement. I'm not asking Excel to tell me that 3 plus 5 is 8. I'm asking Excel to tell me if it's true or not that 3 plus 5 equals 8. I'm asking it to evaluate the correctness, you know, the true or falseness of this statement. So when I hit enter, this says true. Whereas if I had said equals, you know, 4 plus 5 equals 8, well then it would have said false. It's evaluating whether or not this is true or this is false. So once you see a logical operator anywhere past the first little equal, obviously it has to be there, okay? Once you see anything past that point, okay, you're not asking for a calculation, you're asking it for it to evaluate that. So we're gonna start putting on, well, no, there's one more thing I wanna do before we get there. So now I'm asking things like, is, you know, this less than this, and what if I wanted to ask more than one thing? And I wanna know if A is greater than B, you know, I wanna know a whole bunch of them, and there's something else and something else and something else. If I put them in parentheses, all the things I wanna know, okay, I can evaluate them together, but I'm either going to evaluate them as an and, all these things, or an or. Whatever these are my, you know, asking question. These are my little expressions. Sorry. I'm either evaluating all these things as an and or all these things as an or. Okay. And what happens is different in each particular case. So if I put them all together as an and, what has to be true in order for that expression to evaluate as true?
All conditions.
Everything in there. Everything I'm asking about has to be true. I could have 100 things and 99 of them could be true, but if one of them is false, that whole expression is false. Okay? So if it's being joined together with an or, I have a whole bunch of different things that are either true or false, okay, and I put them together with an or, what has to be true?
One.
At least one, yeah. And so you remember this from, you know, 7th grade Venn diagrams. I don't know when you do Venn diagrams. I have no idea. But anyway, but remember Venn diagrams? You know, the ands, the ors, the whole, okay. Well, anyway, the ands and the ors work just like you've always learned them. So that's another thing that could be here in this condition. Not just one condition, but you could have an and you could have multiple conditions in there, or an or, and have multiple conditions in there. Okay, but it boils down to being either true or false, right? Even if there's multiple ones that you're evaluating, if you join them with your ands and your ors, which you'd have to do, then it still evaluates out as either a true or a false. So we're gonna start piecing that together in this worksheet example. And I know I don't have like nice big paragraphs of information, but I think there's enough information on each row to explain what we're doing on each column. And so the first row is helping, the explanation here is what we're gonna use to determine whether they're eligible for a bonus or not. Okay, and this is what it says. Full-time employees at the SF location are eligible for bonus 1. That's all the information we really need. But you will notice that all we're trying to do right now is determine their eligibility. We're not trying to do anything with that information. We're just trying to determine yes or no, you know, true or false. Are they eligible for bonus one? So they have to be a full-time employee at the SF location, which implies that when I put those two things together, I put them together in what, an and or an or? Yeah, because it implies that both of those things would have to be true, okay? So, most of the time, I'm gonna make some exceptions on this file, this sheet, because because I need for you to see how it would be entered if you weren't entering a cell address. Most of the time, we would want to compare things with cell addresses. But if we didn't, if we just check to see, is this person full-time or part-time, C7, if we had to put text in, so is this equal to, we would have to put that text in quotation marks. Now, granted, I'm gonna say we don't, in the future, after I'm doing the example where we're just learning how to, you know, how to put in text and how to put in numerics, really as good practice, you're going to always be putting in cell references. But if it was in text, we have to have it in quotation marks. Are they full-time? Is their location, that's B7, equal to this SF that's over here? If you don't have those, you can just jot them over there somewhere, because that gives us the option of now referencing a cell. I am gonna be copying this to the other people, and so I have to make sure that the reference to that cell is an absolute reference. And I've asked the two questions, for this row at least. Is this person full-time? Is this person at the SF location? Well, this person's not, both of those things. And in fact, not very many of the people are. It's only like 3 people that are both of those things that come up true. But we have determined in this column their eligibility for bonus one.
Wait, I click mine down and it's all false.
Oh, because you don't have anything in that
When,
location. There's no location that's
Oh,
somewhere.
do you have an absolute reference to this cell? Or if you don't have that cell, if you just want to put it.
I didn't put the location in the sense.
Yeah. Okay, that takes care of that column. That's their eligibility for bonus one. Now I read the next line, it says bonus two is available for all MC location employees and all pay grade level 2 or higher employees. What is that really saying? Where was it? It's saying or. I know in English the word and is there. I put it in there on purpose. But I want you to think about what is really implied in the statement. The statement is implying that you can be MC and get it. You can also be pay grade level 2 and get it. Okay. We have to be very careful that what's written in English is not necessarily the same thing as the logical, way that it comes out. I am really careful on quizzes. On quizzes, I go out of my way for that word not to be there so that no one just thinks automatically that's what it's supposed to be. Like I would say something like, bonus 2 is available for all MC location employees as well as all pay grade level 2. I'm trying to get that, not to predispose somebody to think that that's an and because they see the word and in there, okay? But I do it in class on purpose so that I can say that, so that I can tell you, don't just make assumptions like that. Think about what is really being asked. And what's really being asked in this case is an or, because they can be one or the other, okay? They're either MC location, okay, location equals to, I've got an MC over here. Want to make sure that stays absolute, that doesn't change. Pay grade level 2 or higher, pay grade greater than or equal to, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and hard code something in, again, not good practice, but it's example-y. That's why it's in here, is because it's for example purposes. When you're referencing, in this case, a number, then you don't have to put quotation marks around it. When you were doing text, it had to have quotation marks around it. So this is asking, is this person at the MC location? Or is this person a pay grade level 2 or higher?
So you said you hard-coded that, so what would be the alternative?
That you would have had a box somewhere that says, pay grade, and there would be a cell that someone could enter, 1, 2, 3, 4, and at the moment it probably has a 2 in it, but you would just have another little set of places where you had that information, you could always reference it. And here's why you would always wanna do that. Because later, it might actually be just like a little input area, input the pay grade level, input the, and so then there's just one spot where people put information in.
But since it's a number, it's like not that big of a deal.
You know, in this example, it's not a very big deal, okay? In this example, it's not, because we know that that's how this one works. When we get into our other models, we just wanna avoid putting, text and numbers in. And for all practical purposes, like your real things that you'd be doing, it would just be unlikely that you'd be putting straight text and numbers in, it just probably would be contained somewhere and you would reference it. Okay, so there's a lot more people that are eligible for bonus 2 than were eligible for bonus 1, so that's good. So we determine their eligibility, that's in column G, that's in column H. Now we're gonna calculate their bonuses, and this information will tell us how to do that. For eligible employees, bonus 1 is gonna be 5% of their actual sales if their quota has been met. So now we're doing something with the information that we have. We're calculating, if need be, we're calculating for them. But what has to be true in order for us to calculate their bonus? What has to be true for us to calculate their bonus? For them to get a bonus?
The actual sales has to be more than the sales quota?
Right, the actual sales have to be more than the sales quota.
The SF location,
And what?
the SF location for bonus one.
Well, they basically have to be what? They have to be eligible. So there's actually 2 things going here. They have to be eligible and they had to meet their quota. So in the condition, I need to check both of those things. And they have to be both of those things, so that would be an and. So I would check and say, okay, are they both eligible? Okay, there's the interesting thing about eligible. I don't have to go back and do that whole, how do you figure out if they're eligible thing or not, because I already did that. Okay, I already made a column that says whether or not they're eligible. But that column contains in it Boolean logical values of true and false. I don't have to say, is G7 equal to true? I don't have to say that, because all I have to say is G7. That's it, done. Why? Because it already contains a value of either true or false. And so this is either already going to be true or false, and then the next thing I'll check, but I don't have to compare that to true or to false. I just say it, it already has a true or false in the cell. Okay. Then I have to see if they met their quota. So I have to see if their actual sales are greater than or equal to their quota. So, again, this is either true or false, this is either true or false, okay? And they both have to be true for the whole thing to be true. But each of those things is either true or false. One's a comparison, one is a reference to a cell that already did that already did the work. And if so, then we would calculate their bonus, and their bonus would be actual sales times 5%. So in the interest of trying to get away from putting like 0.05 in here, or 5%, I put it into a cell already, but I am going to copy this, so I need to make sure that the reference to that cell would be an absolute reference to that cell. So there's their calculation of their bonus, F7 times I5. I5 is absolute. If they weren't eligible, or they didn't meet their quota, then their bonus is 0.
Is there
They don't
button
get a
at all?
bonus.
Is there a button to
Let's
make it
put a 0
quicker?
in
I
here.
noticed the money signs. Okay.
Okay. Here's the condition. It's checking for 2 things. They both have to be true in order for us to make that calculation. If they're one or both of them are not true, then that person doesn't get a bonus. They get 0. Does that make sense? The logic of the if statement? Nod here. Okay. Okay. So that person, well, they weren't eligible. In fact, remember, there were only 3 people that were eligible anyway. And of 3 people that were eligible, 2 of those 3 get bonus. So, Okay. So here's the thing about that. My condition was an and. It actually only had two things in there, but it was an and. My joint conditional, it tested two things. Another way that we could test two things would be to say if, and test one of the conditions, condition one. If it's true, then go on to test condition two with another if statement. Okay. Now test condition two. Okay. Get the right words in here. Eligible, quota met. Okay. Are you eligible? Yes. Did you meet your quota? Great. Calculate the bonus. Okay. I should get through periods of any of this stuff. Okay. Were you eligible? Yes. Did you meet your quota? No. Then you don't get a bonus. Okay. Way back over here. Are you eligible? No, you're not eligible. Then you wouldn't do any of this because you would come over here and find out that your bonus is 0. Okay. So every colors, I discovered that the red one's not working. So every if statement has 3 parts to it. It has a condition, what you're gonna do if it's true, what you're gonna do if it's false. It just so happens that the outer one on here has a condition. It's what to do if it's true is an if statement. Well, that was not a very straight line. And here's what we do if it's false. It has its 3 parts. It's what you do if it's true part is an if statement, okay? Which has its own 3 parts to it. This would have been another way to do what we did here with an and. Okay? So you're thinking to yourself, why would I do that? Because that seemed a lot easier. And in our particular example, we probably wouldn't do it, but what it opens up the possibility of, that we didn't have the possibility of before, is that you could differentiate between why you ended up at these zeros. So in other words, I'm going to end up at 0 either way. And so you're thinking, well, I could have just done this one, then it would have been easier. But this one could have had the option to do this. This 0 is saying, yes, you were eligible, but no, you didn't meet your quota. And so this might have been a little text phrase. I'm sorry, you didn't meet your quota. You don't get a bonus this year, okay? Or whatever. This 0 would have been a, I'm sorry, you're not eligible for this bonus. You see the difference? So you could actually differentiate when you couldn't differentiate on the other one. Yeah.
But that one, for either outcome, it would still only say 0, right? Like you'd have to manually say something different?
So in this particular case, I would change this. Yeah, I would change this to where it was like a little text phrase that explained to them why they didn't get it. I don't really want to do that on this worksheet because I don't want to have text in places where I'm later going to make calculations. But if you had a worksheet where what you were trying to do was the final column should explain to somebody, you know, this is your bonus, you don't get a bonus, here's why you don't, you know, for whatever reason. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put it in like that over here. If, and my logical test would be, are you eligible? Remember, I've already done that work. I did that work right here. Are you eligible for bonus 2? Oh, I didn't even read the line up here. For eligible employees, bonus 2 is 20% of actual sales that exceed their quota. There are going to be 2 things that we're going to look at here too. Are you eligible? That's an H7. Don't have to, it's got a true or false in it. That's all I need to ask. Is H7. H7 will either be true or false. If it's true, did my actual sales exceed my quota? Did my actual sales, were they greater than my quota? Okay. Because if they were, then I am going to do the little calculation of the bonus 2. It's not 20% of all of their sales, it's 20% of that excess, and so you've got to figure out what that excess is. Actual minus quota, it's on that excess, that extra, that they get 20%. I have a 20% up here. Make sure that that's an absolute reference to that. Okay. So I've asked the first question, are they eligible? Yes. Ask the second question, did their actual exceed their quota? Yes. Find that excess, that difference, and multiply it by 20%, just make sure that's absolute. If, however, yes, they're eligible, did they meet their quota? No, now I'm gonna put a 0 in here, they don't get a bonus. And here's the nice thing about Excel, just point this out while we're at it. Excel, you can find out whether you've matched all your parentheses, you haven't left off any open or closed parentheses, because the colors match up. So like the color of these match up, you know those go together. But there was that chance that way back here, they weren't eligible. So we need to go over here and put comma 0, close that parenthesis, and you'll notice that parenthesis matches in color to this one, this matches in color to this one, those match, you know, all parentheses match. You know, you can see which ones match each other by looking at the colors. And this person gets bonus 2, a lot more people get bonus 2 than bonus 1. People always ask me about this dash, it's just a 0, it's just a formatting style. I'm gonna sum up the bonuses or add them together, however you wanna do that, and that part's simple. There's their total bonus. Questions about either of these if statements in the way that we have them in here? Okay. About if statements a little bit more. So if I was assigning your grades and you have a 90 plus, you're gonna get an A. 80 to 89, you're gonna get a B. 70 to 79, C. 60, 60. 99, you're gonna get a D. And 0 to 59, yeah. Okay, there you go. That's a grading scale. That's how it works. Well, I could, if I had this on a worksheet, and I have your grade in a particular cell. In another cell, I could get it to display for you if that's an A, a B, a C, right? Okay. So if, wherever cell has your grade in it, if your grade is, I would just say greater than or equal to, right? Greater than or equal to 90, and I give you an A. Well, everybody doesn't get an A, so I check now to see if what? What am I gonna check next?
80 to 89,
If it's what?
80 to 89, or I
Okay.
guess greater,
Less than 90.
less than 90.
Greater than 80.
Greater than or equal to 80, less than 90. Do I need to do that? Do I need to say, you know, like do an and, greater than or equal to 80, less than 90? You know, is the other part of it. Do you think I need to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, for anybody that thinks maybe we don't need to do this, why wouldn't we need to do it? Nobody's brave enough to make a committed answer. Okay. What at this point, what has happened with a grade that's greater than or equal to 90? An A has been assigned to it. Okay. So when I get here, was this true or false?
True.
When I get here, not when I get here. When I get here, it was false. Okay. So do I have to say, okay, if it's, do I have to tack on the and less than 90 thing?
No.
No, because I wouldn't be there if if it was less than 90. We didn't have gotten to this point in the expression. So now all I have to say is your grade greater than or equal to 80? That's it. I don't have to say any more. Because I have already assigned A's to anybody that it was greater than 90. So I actually don't have to put both ends of the bound on there. And then I'm gonna check to see if your grade is greater than or equal to 70. And I'm gonna loop around. Then you're gonna get the C. Otherwise, if your grade is greater than or equal to 60, you're gonna get the D. And then what?
Just that.
Yeah, I don't have to say is your grade greater than or equal to 0 or anything like that. I mean, that there is only one thing left at this point, okay? So if I have gotten here, it's not greater than 60. Okay? It's not 60 or greater. And now I close this parenthesis, this parenthesis, that parenthesis, and that parenthesis. And I'm done. And that just assigned grades. And here was the thing. I was able to be more efficient if I purposely went either from top to bottom of the range or bottom to top. I could have done it either way, okay? I could have gone either direction. But I wasn't gonna skip around and assign C's and then D's and then A's and then B's and then, you know, I wasn't gonna skip all over the place because then I would have had to put the upper and the lower bounds on things in certain places. So I'm not gonna be inefficient about it. I'm efficient when I've got a range of things and I go in order one direction or the other. Okay? That would be completely different than if I had mutually exclusive categories. If you came in here and I told you there was a little letter underneath your C, it's either an A. If it's an A, you're gonna get $100. If it's a B, you're gonna get $50. If it's a C, you're gonna get 25. Okay, don't check, it's not the Oprah show. You don't have anything. But anyway, if you had those, you would have one and only one letter. You wouldn't have two, you wouldn't be missing anything. I mean, you would have one of these. Then when I go to do an if statement, I could say if your letter is equal to, well, guess what? I could say anything I want. Now, I'm a relatively logical person, and I'm probably gonna do it ABC. You probably would do that too, but I don't have to. I could say, do you have a B? Then you get 50. If not, is your letter a, doesn't matter. Again, these are mutually exclusive. Doesn't matter what I say next. A, C, I don't care. Okay, then you're gonna get 100. Otherwise, well, now there's only one category left. You're getting 25. Okay. I'm not saying I wouldn't be logical. I'm just saying you don't have to be. If they're mutually exclusive categories, it doesn't make any difference how you put if statements in. It's when they fall into a range that you have to be concerned with the efficiency of what you're doing and putting them in top to bottom, bottom to top, either one. You know, you'll be fine. Make sense? But with all that said, if I was assigning your grades, and I am, if I was assigning your grades, I wouldn't do it with an if statement like that. And not just because we have pluses and minuses and it would be an if statement that would go from here to next week, okay? That's not the only, I wouldn't even do it with this many. I wouldn't even do it with 5, okay? Because there's a lot easier way to do something like this. Now, this is not to say that I don't think that if statements are great. Even nested if to a point. If you're nesting an if, maybe one nested inside of another, for sure that's good. Maybe a third one. But you start to get to 3, I'm probably gonna shift over and do something completely different. And here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna set up a little area. Well, here's what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna use lookup functions, okay? And to use a lookup function, I'm gonna set up an area on my worksheet. Looks like this. Your cells. I do have to go in ascending order. Okay, I do have to go in ascending order with my lookup. And my first column's gonna have the place that I would be looking things up. But interestingly, I don't have to put the bounds, both bounds, I just have to put the lower bound of the range. That's all I have to do. I put the lower bound of the range here, and what it tells Excel is, if you have a grade from 0 up to but not including 60, 59.99999 repeating forever, okay? If you have a grade from 0 to 59.99999, you get an F. If you have a grade from 60 up to 69.99999, you get a D. 70 up to but not including 80, you get this. That's what it's telling you. There is no upper bound on your last one in a lookup. Okay, your last one has no upper bound, it goes to infinity. So if it's 90 or above, you get an A. So I would set this up, and then I would use well, because of the way I set it up, it's a vertical table, I would use a VLOOKUP, okay? Because the VLOOKUP would do this for me way faster than putting in a really long nested if statement. That's what's on the next page, sheet. So what I have here is customers buying cases of tennis balls from us, I think. Anyway, so we've gotten several orders, and we offer to them a quantity price discount. In other words, if the more they buy from us, the better, in unit price they're getting. So you see this table right here? It's just like I set up with the grades. This is telling us that if they order from 0 to 59 cases, they pay our full price of $2.45. If they order from 60 up to 119, they get a little price break. From 120 to 239, a little better price break. If they order 240 or more, they get our best possible price of $2 a case, as opposed to the $2.45 a case. That's already been set up. It's actually also been named. I'll show you that. Then we're figuring out the rest of their order. We also have to charge them for shipping. Turns out with shipping, they have 4 choices. They can have it sent by truck, by rail, by ship, or COD. The customer will pay for it when it gets there. Okay, so that's another thing that has to factor into this. I have a table set up for it. Both of these being vertical tables. Now, I'm not saying you get this a whole lot. Horizontal tables are unconventional, especially if it's a very large table. You wouldn't generally have it in a horizontal table. That'd be a little weird. We have to put these in vertical tables. But sometimes very small tables are horizontal. It's the way somebody sets them up. They choose to do that, fine. Okay. This is horizontal. If you order from 0 to $299.99, you don't get, and we have 2 different discounts that could possibly apply. You don't get a discount at all. If you order $300 up to $999.99, you might get our 15% discount, you might get our 10% discount. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you order $1,000 worth of stuff from us or more, you are gonna get one of our higher discounts. So when I was showing you that setup for a vertical table, or these setups for vertical tables, I didn't mention that it would be perfectly okay if there were more columns out here and they're part of the table too, and when you look something up, you might be looking for this, or you might be looking for that, That's possible. I don't have that there, or didn't have it there, don't have it here, but I do have it in this horizontal table. I do have the possibility of 2 different discounts. Obviously, only one of them will apply at any given time, but I have the possibility of 2 different discounts, okay? So we're gonna use these in here with VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUPs and kind of see the difference between them. Unit price. Again, what's the unit price based on? How much they order, okay? The more they order, the better the price, the better the unit price. Okay. And so up there in a table, I have that, so I'm gonna use a VLOOKUP. Okay. To do the VLOOKUP, of course, we'll look at our tooltips that have just popped up. What are we looking, what's the value we're looking up? Well, the number that they order, So that's D17. The table array, like that one, like these, okay? It's this one right here. This is where it should be looking it up. Do not pick up any labels, just pick up the data part of it, the columns that are actually part of the vertical table without any headings or anything when you do it. You will notice I've already named it. That made it a little easier for us, for me to have already named it, because that helps. So unit pricing, The next item it wants to know, on here it says column index number. Here's what it's asking. In which column of your table do you find the answer you're looking for? Okay, would you find the answer you're looking for? So be really careful, they're not talking about which column, meaning which Excel column, like column A or B or C. They're talking about your table, the first, the second, the third, the fourth. Okay, well for us, the column that it's in is the column of our table that contains the answer we would be looking for will be the second column. And then you get this last part. So what type of a match is this? We're assuming, and many moons ago, they referred to this as a range match. It's been a long time since they've called it that, but in my mind, I still see it that way. It's like it's a range of numbers that you're working with. Like, we're not assuming that there's an exact match to this. We don't think that people have to buy exactly 60, exactly 120, or exactly 240. No, they could buy 152. They could buy 39. You know, they could buy whatever. And so it's in a range. It's what Excel refers to as an approximate match. Now you notice, remember tooltips? When something's in square brackets, it's optional. Meaning you don't have to put it in, it's gonna use whatever the default is. The default is approximate match. But I will say, I think it's a good idea just to get in the habit of going ahead and typing it in anyway, just so you're used to it on VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUPs, so that you don't forget when it's necessary, you know, so you don't think it's not supposed to be there. Anyway, so, but this one is what you would consider an approximate match. We don't think they have to exactly order 60 or 120. All right, so that's the way the VLOOKUP would be in there. This, you know, you should of course get the answer that you're expecting. They ordered 240, they better be getting a $2 price. And you can kind of spot check the rest of it. These two people didn't order very much, they're paying full price. They ordered more, they're getting varying levels of discounts associated with it, so kind of spot check it, make sure everything worked right for you. All right, really fast, let's just put the total price in. The total price would be your quantity times your unit price. So they bought 240 items at $2, so they're paying us $4.80, everybody else is paying whatever theirs is. Okay, so we got the total price there. Unit shipping.
Which one is it? It's D17 times E17?
Yep.
Yes, DD. Yeah. So quantity times unit price. Okay, so the next column over, the unit shipping, well, it depends. Their unit shipping amount is based on how they decide they want us to send it to them. Do they want to send it truck, rail, ship, you know, customer COD? You know, which do they want to do? I can look that up. It's a vertical table, so I'm going to use VLOOKUP. Okay, the lookup value is, well, the method that they chose, which you would find right over there in C17, right? This particular customer with this order chose rail. Where am I looking it up? What's the table that contains it? Again, remember, don't get labels. Don't get the column labels in there. Just get the table itself, which I named shipping costs. But there it is. You know, which did they choose? That's the price that they'll pay per unit. Yeah, now, what column contains the answer that we're looking for? Yeah, the second one. What kind of a lookup is this?
True.
Is it? So is there something between truck and rail and between rail and ship?
False.
Yeah, it's exactly those four choices. Those are their four choices. They don't have any others. It's an exact match up lookup. That's not the default. You do have to type false in. I mean, you do, because that's not the default. So they chose rail. They paid 20 cents a unit. They did too. They chose ship. They chose truck, COD. You know, it all comes out right. Okay. On this type of problem, on a VLOOKUP that's an exact match, you have to have a match. So if for your data entry person, by accident, over here on rail, put train. It kinda seems like the same thing, right? So they put train instead of rail, you're gonna have NA, you're gonna have no answer. There's no match. It's not one of the things in there, okay? So there's not gonna be anything there. Well, what if you see this? And you see that, and you see that, and you think that's weird. Well, whether you were watching me type or not, what did I do here? Yeah, I put a space after it. Because remember, I told you, and it's so important, this whole idea of spaces being characters. Because there are so many things in Excel that you do that you're matching things. You do it in if statements, you do it in lookups, you do it, all kinds of functions have some matching component to them, okay? And you have to make sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen, and so you've actually gotta clean up your data if necessary, if you don't know what's in there and you need to get it where you're sure of what's in there. But I just wanted to point out, I wasn't kidding when I say lots of the things that we do require you being able to match. And character strings don't match when there are spaces in some and not in others, and you may not even be aware of it if they fall at the end, okay? If they fall at the end of the item. Okay, so there's that. Total shipping, okay, total shipping's real quick and easy too. How many units did you order? What's the shipping price for each unit? So D17 times G17. So, and everybody has their own shipping total that the numbers should, you know, again, quantity times unit shipping, that's your shipping total. So now, we offer a shipping discount to our better customers, as you can tell us, the more they order, the better a discount they get. But we often have more than, we do offer more than one discount. So we have to figure out what we're offering right now. So we'll just say that in the month of August, we do discount 2. So you'd have to have this information. You would have to have somebody tell you which discount are we using. So I'm telling you, in August, we use discount 2. Okay. This is actually gonna be a little bit of an iterative process. The first thing we put in, we'll need to do something else and then do something else. But anyway, so the shipping discount, I would determine that by using this table, but this table is what type of table? Yes, horizontal, so I've gotta use an H lookup. Works just like the V lookup, so there's nothing in here that's gonna be just dramatically different to you, it's a horizontal table. So the lookup value, well, it's how much they spent with us, so their total price of their order, which column is that? That's an F17. Where's the table array? There's the table array. And yes, it has more than one row. We get that. These didn't have, well, they have more than one column. It has more than one additional row. Okay, so there's 3 rows to this. These are instead 2 columns. And instead of course, this one's horizontal, so it's not gonna say what's your column index number, it's gonna say what's your row index number. So what row contains the answer that we're looking for?
3.
Yeah, row 3. And that's simply because I just told you we were using shipping discount 2. If you didn't know, you wouldn't have any idea which row it was in. But in the 3rd row, you would have that information. And what type of a lookup is it?
Absolute.
It's an approximate, so we would put true or not put anything, because that's the default, but I think it's a good idea just to put true. Okay. Now, so there it is. It's in there. Again, I had named that table shipping discount. Yeah.
What happens if I accidentally put VLOOKUP? Would it have like error or something, or?
Yeah, it'd be pretty messed up,
Okay.
but,
On the quiz.
so it'd be looking it up here, like in this column, and, yeah.
So on the quiz, you have to know both HLOOKUP and.
Well, I mean, you just look at the data that you're working with, and is the data in a vertical table or is the data in a horizontal table if you need to do a lookup function? So now here's the weird thing about this one. Initially, what it's doing, okay, because this person ordered $480, that's over 300, less than $9.99. They're getting a 10% discount, but it's showing you that 10% in dollar figures, and here's why. Because I could have put two columns in. I could have done the 10%, then I could have done another column where I calculated what is the actual discount itself, but I'm just having us put it all into one place. 10% discount, go ahead and take that H lookup and multiply that whole thing, go up to the formula, multiply that whole thing times the shipping total, or H17. So take that whole thing and say, now multiply that by H17. Why? Because the discount is not 10 cents. The discount is 10% of $48, which is $4.80. And when I just put it all in one cell, it could have been all separated out if we wanted, bigger table. But anyway. And the next part, you don't have to do this if you don't want to do this. I like for numbers on worksheets to appear like they are additions or reductions from what we're working on, and that's like a reduction to our total cost. And so you will hardly ever even see this because it's so tiny, and so you really have to be paying attention that I'm doing this. In front of that H lookup, I'm just putting a little negative sign in because I want it to display as a negative number. It's a reduction to my total cost, and I think on the worksheet it would look better like that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. But you do have to recognize what you chose to do and what you didn't choose to do when you do the grand total. Because like for me, I'm now gonna say my total price plus my shipping total plus my shipping discount. Or I could have summed up F17, H17, I17, okay? If you choose not to make this negative, then you say this plus this minus that. I mean, I don't care. I don't care which way you do it. It's just that, be consistent. The end value should be what you see. The end values should be what you see here. So whether or not you choose to do it, that's, that's up to you. That's the right ending value for the whole thing. So that gave you a little sampling. Because again, it's one of those textbooky kinds of problems. It gave you a little example of a VLOOKUP that is an approximate match, a VLOOKUP that's an exact match, an HLOOKUP, one that uses a different row, in this case because it was the HLOOKUP. So you got a little sampling of lookups.
Mine says F30, 532.80 for J17.
One of the things that you might want to do, did this say 480?
That is 480, yeah. Oh, but it's not negative now.
Yeah. So make sure whichever you did, made it negative, add them all. You made it positive, subtract that one.
Can you go to your formula on page 17?
Versus 17, yes. Yeah, the shipping total is just how many did you order and what's the individual unit shipping cost, so the D17 times G17. Okay. So real quick, there's another, I don't know if it falls into a lookup function, but it does look stuff up for you, and so I guess in some ways it is, but what it does is a little bit different. In the last one, we had some value, we were matching it within a range, or to exact things, and then coming up with what would be the answer, based on that. There are a couple of others, only one of which we're gonna look at here, and it's the index example. I just figured out why I might not have this. This might not be on the quiz, but that's okay, we'll go ahead and do it now because we need to see it. We're going to be able to use the index function to, if you can tell Excel the numeric location within a range of what you're looking for, is it on the fourth row, the third column, if you can tell it the location, it will tell you what's in that cell, okay? So eventually, we're gonna be able to look up these people's shipping by knowing what region they're in, one of our 5 regions, what method they chose, one of the 4 methods. These could have been words, north, south, east, west, train, rail, anyway, but they aren't. And then what type of customer are they? Are they our standard customer or brand new customer? Do they order a lot from us and we get preferred? Do they order a ton from us and they're our most preferred customer? Well, at the moment, let's say, because I'm gonna build this up as we go, let's say that we're gonna use the index function in a way that all we take into account is region. And let's say this customer is in region 4. We would use the index function to say, go to this range of numbers and find the 4th one and tell me what's in it, okay? So we would use index, okay? Go to this range right here, don't pick up any of the labels, just pick the data up, no extra labels or anything. Pick up that range and tell me what would be the shipping for somebody that's in region 4. I don't wanna put a 4 there, I'm gonna reference this cell up here, but that's what I'm asking it to do. Go to this range, find the 4th item, and tell me what's in there. And of course, it's gonna tell you it's 28 cents. If we actually take 2 things into account, what region are you in and what method did you choose? And let's say this particular customer chose method 3. I could get index to do what I could do manually, and this is what I would do manually. I would say, okay, they're in region 4, shipping method 3, oh, it's gonna cost them $2.25. I can get index to do that for me. Index, going to this 2-dimensional array, then I have to tell it row and column. The row is the region, the column is the shipping method, which I have stored up there in H9 and H10. So it's saying go there, go to H9, that's 4, okay, and H10, that's 3, go there and tell me what I was doing manually, $2.25. But it is possible actually to take this even a step further and do a 3rd dimension, and that would be what kind of customer they are. Now it's gonna get, let's say that they're a preferred customer. So the index starts to get, well, let me do it manually before I start typing the index in there. They're a preferred customer. I go to this one, go to row 4, I go to column 3, I see that they're gonna pay $2.03. The index, what does the index do? The index has to, it's a little more complicated now when you have to specify what these ranges are, the array that you wanna go to. They don't even call it an array anymore, they call it a reference. You do have to open another set of parentheses. This has to be another set of parentheses. And then you just put in all of the ranges. This one, comma, this one, comma, this one. Okay, close the parentheses. Okay. So you've got to get all the ranges in there. That's what it's looking at. Then you have to tell it what row, that'd be their shipping region, what column, that'd be their shipping method, and then you notice what it says next, what area. It's referring to these as areas, okay? Which area? Well, the area would be the second one because they're a preferred customer. And let me just tell you, Excel doesn't really care where these fall in the worksheet. It cares where they fall in here. You could be totally illogical if you wanted to and put these all in different orders. You could put this one in first, that one in second, that one in third. All Excel cares about is this one, whatever it is number 1. This one, whatever it is number 2. This one is number 3. Well, we're saying go to 2. So we're saying go to B11 to E15. Go to B11 to E15, look up 4th row, 3rd column, should be 2.03. After I was doing this in the first class, I really want to go ahead and do it here, but I wasn't entirely sure, to be honest with you, if this is on the quiz, because it is something that we're gonna be able to work with more. We will have a moment where we work with it more. It might be just right after the quiz. And we'll pair it up with something called match, and it'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, the index does work like this. We will do a more practical example of it. This is very much just the mechanics of how it works. That's all this example is kind of showing you the mechanics of how it works. We'll get a more practical example later. Not even entirely sure this is on the quiz. Speaking of the quiz, that's Tuesday, okay? So that's where you go. When you come to class, you don't come to this class, you go to CBB 126. Bring ID, that's all you have to have is your ID with you.
Student ID or any ID?
Student ID is probably the best thing, but any ID. Yeah.